Hi, my name's Stephanie Davies. I'm the founder and director of Laughology, and I've been looking at how humour can be used for the past 20 years in learning, in engagement, and how organisations can use it as a way to help people to think differently, learn better, feel better, and work better. This session is all about storytelling, and it's called Once Upon a Team. Great title, made it up myself. And this session is all about how storytelling can be a way to engage people in change, engage people in new ways of working. As the head of happiness here at Laughology, I've worked in organisations for the last 20 years, and what doesn't always land well is why change is happening. And it's because we forget to use stories. And stories are a really powerful part of how we help people to think differently about change. You add in the special ingredient of humour, and that's what I'm going to share with you today. In order to explore this, we really need to understand the brain. And in order for us to understand the brain, we need to really think way back about how the brain works and how many brains we actually have. You might be thinking, I just have one. Surely I only have one. Well, we actually have 3 brains. Now, it's all part of the same brain, but the way the brain was built is you had the first part of the brain, which was just for instincts and urges. And this part of the brain, also known as the reptilian brain, was just responsible for being able to protect itself, for being able to reproduce. And they were really the only things. Now, thankfully, we've come a little bit of a longer way. In workplaces, it's not just about that. In fact, it should not be about that. Because the second part of the brain that came on top of that was our emotional part of the brain. This part of the brain, the amygdala, some people might call it, is the part of the brain that needs to feel psychologically safe and it needs to feel connected to other people. It's a really important part of the brain for actually helping us to feel settled and not igniting that reptilian brain that just reacts to things. So if we get that part of the brain right, then we settle the instincts and urges and we're more likely to listen. Then we have the very top part of the brain, the thinking part of the brain, also known as the neocortex. And this part of the brain is more rational and it deals with facts and it's being able to think things through. Now, we need all of this brain to be able to work and make changes and to get on in life. But what we tend to do in workplaces is when we're talking about change, we only talk to the very top part of the brain, the neocortex, because we share facts and information. This is what's going to happen. We might share a little bit of the why, but we don't go into the human side of the storytelling. And the reason why storytelling is so important is because it connects to the whole brain, and particularly that emotional part of the brain. If we can link why we're doing something to the human benefit and make it real to the individual, we satisfy that part of the brain and it helps people to engage and it stops people from going into that fight or flight and worrying, is this change going to impact me negatively? Let's look at how we do this. So if I said to you now, okay, just by yourself, have a think about it and just draw a house. That's all I want you to do, draw a house. If you've done this, your house might look something like this. Now, this is quite common. Wherever I go, people draw this house. And you might be thinking, is she inside my head? I'm not, don't worry. That's a little bit weird. But what I have done is just asked you to draw a fact, a house. And that's what you've done. You've probably drawn a fact-based house. Maybe some windows and some birds and the sunshine. Maybe that's a little bit of hope there. But if I said to you, okay, when I was younger, I lived in lots of different houses. And let me tell you the story about that. So sadly, we didn't have our own home. We moved about lots and lots when I was younger. And by the time I was 18, I'd lived in 17 different houses. When I was 21 and left university, I was really lucky that my grandma gave me £2,000. And she wanted to give that to all her grandkids before she passed away. And with that £2,000, you're talking many years ago, and a Liverpool, I was able to put a deposit down on a house. Now, it wasn't a great house and it wasn't in a great area, but it was mine. And it wasn't just a house, it was a home. And over the next 10 years or so, I built that home. I did my own decorating. I put the bathroom in. I learned how to tile. I learned how to fit carpets. And all that was what made it my home. So what I'm going to ask you to do now is have a think about that story and draw a home or discuss with people around you. What is a home? The reason why that's different from me just asking you to draw a house is because I've told you a story. What I've done is I've engaged your emotional brain, hopefully, but I've also engaged your neocortex, your facts part of the brain, where I talked about what I actually did. And by doing those things, I've settled that part of the brain which feels safe to explore things in a different way. What I've actually done is I've released dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin and endorphins in your brain. And this is what's really important to make learning and information stick. So if we create a story that connects the emotional part of the brain and puts in a dose of that happiness and the dose of that emotion, dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins, that information's more likely to stick. This is what we call sticky learning, but it's also information that's more likely to be understood. And it's not just telling the story either. It's about how we sell the story. And that comes through how we speak about it. I call these things your good humour ingredients. We have to perform a story with our facial expressions, with our body language, with our voice and tone and pitch, with the types of words that we use. And words are really important because I could say house or home and there's a different connotation with those words. So choose words wisely, but also be passionate about your story because people will connect to your passion. There's a lovely part of the brain called mirror neurons. I don't know why I did that because it doesn't look like that. And so if we tell the story with our whole facial expressions on our body language, people will engage with that because other people's brains will go, wow, they're excited and they're passionate about the story. That must mean that there's something for me to do. And the brain will want to connect and mirror that passion as well. And the reason why this is so important, facts just tell, stories sell, and they create the emotion that we need to sell the idea. And it's not just the story itself. There's little tips and tricks that I can give you, which are from the comedy circuit. So the power of questions are really important for storytelling. If I said to you now, I went on a train the other day and it was freezing cold and there was someone who sat next to me and talked at me the whole train journey. You kind of go, okay, yeah, that's information. But if I said to you, have you ever been on a train and you're on your seat and you're thinking there's a spare seat next to me, please no one sit next to me. I just want peace and quiet. And you try and not make eye contact and then you look up, but it's the worst thing that you've ever done. How many of you have looked up and you've caught someone's eye and then they go, can I sit there? And you think, oh no. And then that whole train journey, it's like they just want to talk to you. I've used questions throughout that to engage you. And I bet you're sitting there nodding. And that nod means that your brain's engaged. So questions, we can't help but engage with those questions. So use questions and stories to really engage people in change. If we just tell people about change, we're not going to guarantee that they understand it. But you use stories and you use questions, you alert the brain. And the brain is alerted because it uses all these beautiful different parts. There's something called neural coupling that the brain does. I mean, how beautiful is that? Neural coupling. What that actually means is the brain is connecting all the information that you shared through its neural pathways and connecting it to different parts of the brain to make sense of it. If we just say a fact, it just goes into that top part of the brain, but neural coupling uses all the emotional part of the brain as well. Then we use mirroring because we're engaged with how someone's telling it. And the dopamine is released because it then goes, okay, I want to do something that links me to that information. So it creates action. And there you've got the action that is really needed for behaviour change. So when we talk about stories, it really is about connecting emotionally. It's about creating a hook, creating insight, and therefore the call to action. And then if we use questioning to shape thinking, we get the perfect story and the perfect engagement.